And we're good to go.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Actually, it's afternoon. My name is Donna Bailey, and I am chairing this particular committee. This is the October 5th meeting. And I think just a reminder that please put yourself on mute because this is streaming. Raise your hand if you'd like to be recognized and put yourself off of mute so we can hear what you have to say, because we do want everyone's input. And the public, I believe, is listening via the website. So I believe everybody got a copy of today's agenda. So I suggest, and we do have a quorum, we were concerned that we might not excuse the grandfather clock. And before I start, I really would like to thank Matthew for working with me this morning to make sure that I knew everything that was on the agenda and where it was supposed to go and what direction, since this is my first meeting. So if I flub it, please forgive me. Let me just see, sorry, after going through that. I suggest that we move to some of the updates, if we could, from City Council. I believe, is Mosley here with us?
Before we jump into that, can we review and approve the September 2021 meetings?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. Do we have a nomination to approve the September meeting minutes?
I'll move.
Second.
But I have a question also.
Sure, go ahead.
Just a point of clarification, either now or later in the meeting. My memory is that it was reported last month that in Thomas Wolfe, the lighting and the HVA was done, but in the minutes now I read that the lighting has been done, but all the HVAC will not be done until perhaps December. And I'm sure Daniel would be curious about that. So either at this point or sometime in the meeting, I'd like to get clarification on that.
Absolutely, John. And some of those notes are paraphrased from the official transcript recorded by that as well. So I'm sure we can get into that when we get to the venue component of it.
Thank you.
Okay. Could we have approval of the minutes by raising your hand? Aye. Any nays? Approval of the last month's minutes, September's minutes. Matthew, is it time to now move on to a message from the City Council, an update?
Yes, that'd be fine, but I'm not sure Antoinette's on here today, so maybe we could table that, and if she pops on, we can circle back to that.
Sounds good. Now, Deb, you're up.
And I think Antoinette said that she had a funeral. I thought that was her email. So Sports Commission, starting a busy time for us right now. I'm going to be jumping off this call as soon as I finish my report, because we have a major site visit in town and arriving. I have airport pickup, so excuse me jumping off. We're working on the Asheville Championship. That is going to be held on November 12th and 14th. If you are interested in tickets, we do have tickets available for purchase. Also, the Sports Commission has some special kind of city booster passes. So if you're interested in that, you can get with me or Madison Davis in my office. We will move into December. We have the grapple wrestling tournament. That's going to be on December 17th and 18th. We are working on all of our protocols for that. But we've lost a couple of teams from Georgia and South Carolina because they're unable, and it's kind of ironic because they're the ones upset with us last year. But it's ironic that they're not able to spend the night, so they could not travel up. But we still anticipate we had 38 teams. We anticipate low 30s, maybe 32. But we were having some interest from some more North Carolina schools that we didn't know about. So that's a very good event from us. If you go back, I think it's 4 years ago when we started the tournament, we had 12 teams. Pre-COVID, we had 12 mats with. So we thought we would be at 40 this year, but COVID has restricted some of the travel. Gala gymnastics was scheduled for the first full weekend in January, which would have been January 7 through 9. They have made a decision based on the way their tournament is set, their event is set up, and the management of their event, that event will not be held this year in Asheville or anywhere else. So they've canceled this year's event. However, we are working with another major sports organization to fill in those time slots. So somebody we were already talking to about a different period of, a different weekend in January, potentially sliding into that one. And then we are, of course, actively getting ready for the Southern Conference Tournament, which will be March 3rd through the 7th. One of the things about the Southern Conference Tournament is the semifinals are going to roll back to 4 p.m. So the men's semifinals will be 4 p.m. on Sunday instead of 5:30. So that's an adjustment. Actually think that will enhance the ticket sales. We've got a couple of other things out there. I just am not able to talk about them at this time, but I think we'll have a successful week. I do want to say that the Maui Invitational will be held in Las Vegas this year. I will also say it is not an event that we lost, and it has no reflection on our city. It is more of a business decision related to most of the teams are located west of the Mississippi. In fact, the closest one would be Notre Dame in Indiana. Also, the television times line up better on in the West Coast time frame, closer to the times out of Hawaii. So they're able to, we would have to shuffle game times around. And then you have other factors like plane tickets that are very cheap into Las Vegas. And I can tell you that prior to the announcement, I looked for hotel rooms at the host hotel, and they were $55 a night. So there's lots of factors there, but most of all, it's a factor of television, and then Maui Gyms, which is their major title sponsor, has a large presence in Vegas. So our community did a great job last year, and the other thing is the Asheville Championship did not come out of the Maui Invitational. The Maui Invitational came out of the Asheville Championship. We had this year locked in for this event, and that's why they already knew about the venue. They knew about us. And so that's how we were able to pull things off last year. So overall, I think things are moving along pretty well. I thank everyone for their support. Any questions? I know I threw a lot out there really fast. I keep looking at Donna. I'm like, well, Donna knows all this stuff because she's on the board, but that's kind of where we are.
Anybody have any questions for Deb? I know how hard Deb and his team have worked to try to get more sporting events in a very difficult time, and I think they've done a great job. So thank you, Deb.
Thank you. And I also want to thank Chris and his entire staff. And Chastity is getting ready to get worked to death. So we're excited about getting things rolling again.
Great. I think now we should hear from Marshall Hillard from the CVB for an update, if you don't mind, Marshall.
Sure. Good afternoon, all. Happy October, or as they call it in the hotel business, Rocktober. It's a busy time usually in all destinations, and especially here in our lovely mountain town. First of all, just a thank you to Chris, Matthew, and team. We had our annual meeting 3 weeks ago at the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium. Very many positive comments about the experience, food and beverage, friendliness of staff. So I want to give special thanks for that. And it seemed to be a very busy day in the community because we were struggling to find space. So Chris came to the plate. Group sales update. We're continuing to travel and do our trade shows and customer events. In September, we attended the IGLTA annual meeting in Atlanta. We attended Preview, which is an incentive show out in Arizona, targeting incentive customers. I attended Conference Direct annual meeting. Conference Direct is one of our major third parties that sources business, and we're trying to get a little bit more to our destination. Of course, along with the Sports Commission, Tina attended Teams. She actually was there last week. This week, we're at another third-party conference called HPN. They're the other top three that we're targeting with third parties. We go to AENC end of the month, and then SITE, which is another incentive travel show for the Southeast down in Atlanta later this month. So overall, just trying to shake the bushes and find some new business opportunities for us. In terms of volume, just a slight slowdown in new leads this month, the month of September that we just finished. We usually compare it to 2019, and overall leads were at about 62% of 2019 levels. So maybe, certain hesitancies out there, just a little bit, but continuing to work to find some new business opportunities. And thank you all for your support.
Is the entire country being affected the same way, or is it just regionally that we're being affected?
I'm trying to get some exact data on that, Donna. Overall, in terms of, Asheville as a destination, we are faring much better than the rest of the country. I don't have it as specific as, with the recent lead slowdown, but I do intend to get that data. I would say, even in the darkest days, we were faring so much better than the rest of the country. So I would think that, if we're down in leads a certain amount, the rest of the country and certain, especially major city destinations, are down a lot more than that.
Good. Anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you so much for your update, and I know you guys are doing a heck of a job as well. Again, with these circumstances, it's amazing that everybody has been as successful as they have. Daniel, are you here? No, John Ellis, do you want to give a symphony update?
Daniel's here.
Is he? I didn't see him. I'm sorry.
There. Yep.
Daniel, if you please, you have an update on the symphony?
I do. Hi, everyone. So I'm Daniel. For those of you I haven't met yet, I'm the new executive director with the Asheville Symphony, taking over for John, who served as our interim for a while. So Symphony's in pretty good shape. We're up and rolling with a really successful event that we just had a couple of weeks ago at Pack Square Park on September 19th. It was the first time Asheville Symphony had been back together playing live as an ensemble in almost 2 years. Sounded spectacular, and we had anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 people present. So it was a massive success at Pack Square, and we're excited to have the Symphony train up and running again. On November 20th, we returned to live performance at Thomas Wolfe Auditorium, live indoor performance, I should say, at Thomas Wolfe Auditorium. And our season runs through June, including a New Year's Eve celebration. We're, of course, following all the protocols there in terms of masking and mandatory vaccinations or tests, and we're working closely with Chris and his team to facilitate all of that. We are actually stopping by Thomas Wolfe today to check out a new lighting rig that was just installed and see how that works for the orchestra and any issues that might arise there. The ventilation item that John Ellis brought up actually is news to me, because the last I had heard, that repair was going to be complete well before our November premiere. So if there is a change to that timeline, that would be very important for me to know, and would pose a significant problem for having a couple thousand people in Thomas Wolfe Auditorium. So I would love to hear an update on that at some point in today's meeting. As far as sales go, we're trending relatively well. There seems to be great enthusiasm for the return of live indoor performance. I know the Wortham has seen similar success at their venue with some sold out performances. Our subscription sales were at about 87% of our goal, which is great. Single tickets go on sale in a couple of weeks on October 18th. So we'll see what the response is from the single ticket base. I have no idea what to expect, considering this is a new market for me and we're in uncharted territory. So we'll see how things progress. But overall, I'm pretty optimistic and excited about what the future holds for the ASO. And that's my update.
I think your outdoor event was just spectacular. I think that, it really did a lot to boost the energy in Asheville of our citizens. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. It was our pleasure, and the best way imaginable, I think, to return to live full orchestral performance. We're thrilled.
Great. Anyone have any questions for Daniel? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Matthew, and he will go through the general manager's report by individual.
Yes, thank you, Donna, for that. First off, I do believe we have a brief presentation by Natalie Bailey from the City of Asheville Office of Data and Performance. So I'll turn it over to her.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie Bailey. I am the Data Communication Specialist for the Office of Data and Performance in IT Services at the City of Asheville. And I'm here today with my supervisor and the manager of ODAP, Eric Jackson. And so we're going to give a brief presentation on who we are and how we go about our work. And then hopefully we'll have some time for questions from you all. So let's get started. Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, we've got Eric with us. Again, I'm Natalie, and Cameron Henshaw, our data performance analyst, is not here today. And so I'm going to turn this part of the presentation over to Eric.
All right, you want to just hit present?
Okay, I didn't hit present.
Oh.
All right, there we go.
So we're just we'll do this very quickly, but we want to talk briefly about what our mission is, how we go about the work, and some of the stuff we're doing right now. And then the goal of this is really, we're both a resource for you and you're a resource for us, because we are very interested in making sure that our work is connected to the community, and you represent a highly engaged part of our community. So on the mission, this is our mission statement, and I want to emphasize three things, kind of three words in here, or three phrases. And the first is empower. Our job is not so much to be a bureau of data that goes off and does data analysis. Our job is really to empower others to do the work. So teaching, making information available, teaching people, whether they be staff or in the community, how to think about using data, how to think about performance, and then getting them, in some cases, getting them data that they can use in order to either hold us accountable or to advocate for issues that are important to them. The second thing is community and city staff. There's an and there. We're not just an internal department. Our goal is really to make a difference in the ability of staff to be accountable for the outcomes of the work that we're doing, but also to make a difference in the community's ability to advocate for themselves using data. So that and the data is really part of getting everybody on the same page, which is the last part of this. This is about making sure that we're achieving the outcomes we want to achieve and that those outcomes are equitable, that we are being held accountable for the promises that we make and the work that we're committed to doing. And by using data as kind of a common agreement about what's going on, it really helps in our communication. We can use the data to make sure that we're talking about the same things in the same ways, agreeing on kind of what the outcomes are and how we're going to measure success for those. And you want to dive in a little bit more maybe on the engagement and communication part, Natalie?
Yeah, sure, Eric. For me, the biggest part of this is empowering the community. That's the part of the mission that resonated the most to me. And that is, we really want the community to define what success is, because ultimately they are the folks that live with a project or an initiative. And so getting the community in on defining what success means, how that looks for them, not only improves their quality of life, but improves the quality of the work that we here at the city provide for the community. So that's been the biggest part and the biggest thing that has resonated with me regarding the mission of our work here at ODAP. And so now we want to cover how ODAP actually works. And so I'm going to talk about the first two bullet points. We engage in a lot of public engagement and standardized reporting. We do so as a part of doing our work through an equity lens. We want to make sure that the work that we produce is accessible to folks in a myriad of ways on a myriad of platforms, from everything from our website and to engaging with folks like we're doing right now in meetings. And we want to create ways for the community to participate in defining what success in programs and services and initiative is. I touched on that briefly in the previous slide, but in order for us to continue to build and build capacity with the community, but also build on the progress of any work, it has to be informed by the folks that we're serving. And so that can only be done by robust and continuous community engagement. Secondly, data-informed decision-making. So we want to make sure that we aren't doing projects or initiatives that aren't grounded in data, that we're not initiating work that isn't supported by need. And so the only way to do that is to examine data, to talk to folks, and we do this across the department. ODAP works collaboratively and cross-departmentally. And the most recent example of that is our budget process for the upcoming fiscal year. That was a process that involved not only ODAP, but equity, budget, our community and public engagement folks at CAPE. And so we work cross-departmentally to come up with a progress, and we will be building on this progress for the upcoming fiscal year that has departments examining how they allocate resources and where they allocate resources to. And so Eric can actually speak a little bit more about that process and finish us up on this particular slide.
So, and one of the things, so I've been in government now for all of 5 years. Don't know that I'm a seasoned bureaucrat yet, but I'm on my way. And one of the things that I've kind of figured out is that if something isn't built into a standard procedure or process, it isn't going to be sustained. And so a lot of our thinking is how do we plug different ways of thinking into standard processes that people are going to do anyway, because what we're really trying to do is get people to do things differently. And the premier process is the budget process. So making sure that when we're talking about allocating resources, whether that be staff or money, that we're asking questions like, what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve? How are we going to tell if we're going to achieve them, or if we're making progress at every step along the way? And, you know, as I've said, what we're about is empowering staff and community, but particularly with staff, we're about empowering them to do things differently, but it's a big change. And so a lot of our effort is really kind of helping people learn how to do those things differently, which means we have classes, we're doing training that is sort of combined with a facilitated process. So we'll go in and work with the division on a particular initiative that they have and take them through the process of thinking about performance, outcomes, data, measurement, and so on, so that we're both teaching and helping them come up with a product at the same time. We also have an internal communication channels. We've got a newsletter that goes out twice a month to staff who are interested, a discussion channel. We've got a collaboration group that meets every month. All of these are designed to start getting everybody throughout the city kind of thinking about how to approach what they do a little bit differently. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the governance, but it is kind of foundational, because you need to make sure that you have data systems that give you up-to-date and quality data, that you have the processes and procedures in place to make sure that that data is accurate and that it's complete. And of course, you need to think about security and making sure that you're protecting your data both against malicious actors, but you're also thinking through ways that data or its exposure or use might lead to accidental harm. And so our governance function is kind of focused on all of those. Let's go ahead to the next slide.
Okay.
We are, I could go on and on about any of these. You don't have the time, although we are always happy to talk about any of these things or anything else we're doing. But just as a kind of quick overview of how we're trying to do the work, we're involved in a number of key city initiatives. We're working with the folks who are dealing with houselessness to do a better job, not only of collecting data, but communicating that data out to the community. We'll be working with the project manager for the reparations process to make sure that we're both providing data for the commission, but also tracking outcomes. And once the commission does its work, that we've got good mechanisms in place to track the impact that those decisions and investments actually make. And generally, we're involved heavily in equity throughout the city. As Natalie said, we have been involved in the budget process, and we're a core part of planning next year's budget process. We're engaged with the American Rescue Plan funding and our business inclusion efforts. So lots of different initiatives where we're playing a role, in addition to the more internal training, capacity building, governance, and so on. And then I'll hand back to Natalie to talk a little bit about our engagement effort.
Okay, again, our engagement effort, the cornerstone of it is actually communicating with people, as many different groups of folks that are residents and stakeholders in our community as possible. This roadshow and presentation is an example of that. And these communications provide us with data in narrative form that inform us in our establishment of establishing, baseline information that we can measure against as we move forward. We started off back in March, April, talking to community leaders, nonprofit leaders, neighborhood leaders, and basically doing benchmarking around 3 questions about access or perceived lack of access to city services, and learned a great deal. And we're taking what we've learned and building off of that. And those conversations are still ongoing. They're still continuing. And so, these forums offer an opportunity to connect with folks, to get input on more of a one-on-one level that we might not have if we didn't show up to present and to make ourselves available to present information. So that is something that we will continue to do and that we're committed to doing.
So kind of bring this around to something a little more concrete, hopefully for you all. It's easy to talk about data and performance, and it's a good thing. But what does it actually mean? And it's important that we have some structure to what does it mean to use data well? What does it mean to think in a disciplined way about performance? And so we've adopted something called results-based accountability as a framework. Curious, just with a raising of hands, who here has heard of RBA or results-based accountability? This is probably, you get into groups that work with a lot of nonprofits and they'll all raise their hands, and this is a little bit more business oriented, and I think it hasn't made it into that world as much. So there's a couple reasons, though, that we've adopted RBA. One is that the Government Alliance on Racial Equity toolkit that the city has adopted is grounded in results-based accountability. It's sort of built on top of that, and that was what initially led me a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, just to discover it. But it is being very widely adopted in the nonprofit world here locally. It's been spearheaded in the public health arena. It's kind of moved over into criminal justice and equity and education arenas. So, and it's being used pretty much across the country now as one of the standard methodologies for really thinking through focusing on results and on good measurement of the work you're doing to make sure that you're actually getting those results. And part of the reason I was attracted when I first encountered RBA is that it's really, really simple. You can find performance frameworks that are, you have to go off and get, a 2-week long training in order to even understand what they're talking about. And this results-based accountability is designed to be kind of common sense and really simple. And it's grounded, this is kind of a slight boiling down. Instead of the full 7 questions, I'm only giving you 4 here from RBA, but it's kind of the heart, which is start with the ends. What are the results we want to achieve? And that's the question about how do we want our customers or our community to actually be better off? And then that takes us immediately into data and measurement. So how are we going to tell? What does better off mean, and how are we going to tell? How are we going to be accountable because we've identified some performance measures or metrics of some sort that tell us if we're succeeding in achieving those goals? As we start, we want to establish baselines, which means not just where are we now, but where are we going to end up if we don't change what we're doing? And that's a really critical question to ask. because sometimes it's perfectly okay not to take action because it's good enough or it's going to improve. You have reason to believe that things are going to improve. So you want to think about, where is this going? And if it's not going where we want it to go, how are we going to do what in RBA is called turn the curve and move that performance in the direction that we want it to go? And from there, we start to go into strategies. What are we actually going to undertake? How do we expect that to impact our performance measures? We start doing it, and then we circle back around and say, okay, how are we doing? What'll happen if we don't change? Are we on track? If we're not, if we don't change what we're doing, again, that baseline, what's going to happen if we don't do anything? And it's relevant to you in several ways. One, these are questions that are useful in any kind of endeavor, starting from results and working back to how are we going to measure whether we're achieving those results and so on. And you all have plenty of experience looking at, certainly just in the few minutes I've been in this one meeting, you're talking about a lot of data and kind of benchmarks and so on. Having it in this framework, it's really easy to kind of skip past some key questions, just particularly if you're working in areas you're familiar with. And so having these questions can be a good discipline. This is also something where you can use these questions to hold staff accountable. We're going to be using this increasingly throughout the city, and so you should expect us to be using it and expect us to be able to answer these questions. And we'd also love it if, as we start talking about these things, if you're talking about it too, and we're starting to build some shared language with our overall community. That capacity building is community-wide, not just within the city. So with that, I think we're going to send out through your staff liaison some links to resources. Our webpage will tell you what we're doing pretty much up to date. We try and keep it up to date at least monthly. We'll soon be kicking off a newsletter, but also we would just love to hear from you. If you have questions or are just interested in what we're doing or ways that we could help this commission, reach out at any time to me, but also just to the ODAP email address. And with that, I'd love to open it up to discussion and questions.
Eric, would you share one success story that you had from beginning to end as an example of what you do?
So keep in mind that we have officially been in existence since March, so we don't have a long and storied history. We're really kind of building from the ground up. And now I can't think of anything we're doing. I should probably go back and look at. So a lot of these things are in flight. I'll just be honest with you. I think there are a couple of things that I'm pleased with where we've gotten so far. I'm really, even though it was just a bare beginning, I think we were able to have significant influence last year on the budget process by having departments start to look at their core services. We went into that process with the assumption that we were not going to have any money. So we weren't going to go out in a budget process and say, what new stuff would you all like? And so what we did was we really focused together with equity, and I should point out that everything we do is in partnership with departments, but especially with equity, budget, equity finance, and community and public engagement. So we looked at where there might be inequities in the way core services were delivered, identifying where those inequities might be occurring and what service changes might be possible to make in order to achieve more equitable outcomes. This year, we're starting to go deeper into that and saying, How are we going to measure that? So I'm pleased at kind of kicking that off. American Rescue Plan Act funding, we're in the middle of it. This is government. Nothing happens in fewer than 12 months. But we played a big role in figuring out the initial evaluation process for selecting the areas that the request for proposals would focus on, that were tweaked a little bit, but essentially then adopted by City Council. For reparations, again, very much in process, but we were able to provide, and we actually had a meeting today with the reparations project manager, and we're starting out with, here's 50 data sets that are kind of groundwork for the commission when it forms. So just collecting a bunch of data there so that we can start asking those questions. What am I missing? Oh, the other one, again, all of this in process. We ran a series of classes last year and came to the conclusion that having a large class with lots of people from different departments made it hard to really kind of go deep with folks. And so we did an experimental engagement with an internal IT team, kind of our project intake and kind of consulting team, and took them through what I referred to earlier, kind of a targeted, we're going to teach you results-based accountability, but we're going to do it in the context of you identifying some strategies and ways of measuring how you're going to tell if you're being successful. Did that over a couple of months, and they are now starting to implement some of those strategies. I don't know, Natalie, what have I missed? It's a little frustrating. I love your question. I just wish we had more history to be able to say, and here's a list of 17 places where we made a huge difference in the.
Did you touch on houselessness?
I mentioned that we're working on it. So we're again in flight. And this is maybe an example of how we're thinking about our work. So obviously we are, as a community, about to investing and about to invest more significant levels of resources in trying to address problems of houselessness. And so when we met with the team that is dealing with that set of issues, our first kind of step was to say, look, we're already collecting a lot of data. We've got a homeless management information system that our homeless lead has been working with the nonprofits who actually do most of the actual work, and really trying to up the participation levels of those nonprofits, getting data into that system so that we can share that back and track what's going on. We're doing a good job of collecting that data. We're not doing such a good job of telling the community about it. And so let's start, and you should see this in the next month or so. Let's start by taking that data that we're collecting already, we're reporting to Housing and Urban Development because we're required to. Let's start reporting that quarterly and let's put it out on the webpage. And then let's build from there. So that's our initial project, just coming up with some automated ways of taking that data and getting it up onto the website where people can see what's going on. And then kind of pulling that out in two directions. One, we're going to be investing money, for example, in the new emergency shelter and in some other things. Let's name and start benchmarking. Where are we? Where do we think we would be, so that 3 years down the road, when that funding runs out, we can say, and here's what we achieved. And then the other is to start looking at impact on neighboring systems. So if we're doing things with the houseless community, we obviously want to measure our impact on that community, but we also want to start looking at how does this affect our law enforcement load? How does this affect the jail population? How does this affect our mental health facilities? And those are hard things to do, but as we start kind of chipping away at it, it helps us to start to say, we're not just solving this problem in isolation, we're trying to have an impact on the broader community. And that is both, businesses downtown who need to know, what we're accomplishing here, but also all the other services that get involved. If we're not addressing homelessness kind of at some of its roots, then those impacts just kind of spiral out into other parts of the system. And so we want to start being able to measure those.
It sounds like a huge task. It sounds like you're pretty lucky to have Natalie. She seems to be all over it.
Yep, I'm very lucky. And I'm sorry we didn't have our other team member here. And I should say too that we are part of the IT department, so we're slightly better than 3 people. We do have a good team in IT, but we are small and the task is huge. So,
Yvonne has a question.
Yep.
Yvonne, you need to get off of mute.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me ask this question. What I'm hearing is that your group, whatever it is and whatever acronym you're using, is a gatekeeper to the city budget. Am I correct?
No, I would definitely not. So we are a support team to help that budget process be better grounded in kind of. So the budget process this year and last year is trying to do a better job of saying, what are the community outcomes we're trying to achieve? What are the services that the city provides to achieve those? And then how are the resources, what resources are being used to provide one or another level of service? And our role is really primarily to say, let's make sure we're able to quantify and document those impacts and outcomes. So
Eric,
we're a gatekeeper.
Eric, you just defined a gatekeeper. Thank you for that definition. It's what I see is another clog in the wheel of doing what this commission does when we meet and get together, because we are part of the city structure. We represent an investment of the city. We work with the different groups that are involved in using our facility, and we try to enhance that facility to the greater good of the citizens of the Buncombe County and the different areas. You represent just the city, am I correct?
Yes.
Is there a counterpart in the county?
Not a completely parallel. We have different approaches, but they have a performance management group over there that I think we tend to be a little bit more community focused than they do, but we have similar roles.
Okay, so when Daniel or Marshall or anybody that wants to do anything in the city outside of the Civic Center kind of thing, and it's going to require some budgetary consideration from the city, they're going to have to go through your agency?
No, that would, so we have no authority over the budget. We are a support function for the budget department, but in the end, budget decisions are made by city council.
I just want to clarify where your clog is in the wheel.
So I think our role is, so as I said, our role is to really help others in the city change how they're doing their work. So we we're not the person, we're not the group to come to with a request for budget, for example. That would be through the city manager, that would go through the budget department. What we're going to try and do is make sure that we're helping departments when they're making a budget request, or it might be something coming through this group. We're making sure that we're asking the right questions. What outcomes are you trying to achieve? How are we going to measure those outcomes? Can we get data that'll help us to do that? That sort of thing. So we're more of a support department rather than, one of the things I like to say is we're responsible for almost everything and in charge of absolutely nothing. So we're really trying to help other departments do their jobs better. I don't know. I'm probably not explaining this all too well.
No, you're not, but that's okay, Eric. We'll give you a chance, seeing that you're new in the city and things like this. But you look at the resources, and I'm only just sitting here as just one commission member of a group that says that we are on the edge of fantastic change if we want to change. And the first question is, do we really want to change? Or do we want to stay with our old true, and looking at the data that we receive in this group monthly from the management of this facility that the city owns and the county owns, are we doing as a commission, are we serving that to the best interest of the population of Western North Carolina? And how do we look upon your department as an asset, or do we look at your department as an obstacle?
I would certainly hope that you would look at our team as an asset and as a support for, if you want to make a change. So let's, to be a little more specific, if there's something you want to change, we would be delighted to help you think through things like, how are we going to measure that change? How are we going to, we have some data. What data do we already have? What data might we need to collect? How are we going to do that? Those kinds of things we can certainly be a help with. I hope we would never be an obstacle. I can't think of any way that we would actually manage even to accomplish that from our team.
All right,
Well, I think
that's my thoughts. I'll just leave it like that.
Yeah. And I think Yvonne makes a great point, and I've been here listening and thinking, what is information are we looking for that could help in the long run? So needless to say, we'll be knocking on your door probably.
Please do.
Yes. Well, thank you for that presentation. Back to you, Matthew.
Thank you again to Eric and Natalie there for that, and Yvonne with the great questions. And I think it's something that we're all going to keep an eye out to see how that shakes out and how we can all best work together. On last month's meeting, Chris had mentioned the hiring of a new assistant general manager. Her name is Chastity Wilson, and she's actually joining us today. So rather than brag about her, I'm going to let her do that herself. And also on behalf of John and Daniel, if you wouldn't mind also giving a quick update on the Thomas Wolfe projects as well.
Most definitely. Good afternoon as it is with everyone. Very glad to be here. As Matthew mentioned, the new AGM been here roughly around 3 months now, getting close to 3 months. And looks like we are digging our heels in very quickly with a very busy season coming up. So very much enjoying that. I do want to go ahead and start off by letting John and Daniel know about the HVAC project in the Wolf. As we speak right now, the wires are being pulled and the project is underway. However, there were a couple of snags as far as some of the parts, but we are looking forward to having those parts in and available by next week. So project should be wrapping up towards the end of October. With that being said, we already have Gajora that is going to be sold out in the Wolf. We are making those adjustments, so we may have to back up or move forward as soon as possible, as soon as those parts get in there, to make sure that we are up and running for a sold out event as well. So Daniel, it looks like we're going to be looking pretty good for the start of November. And John, hopefully we are going to absolutely have no glitches. I am not going to count that out as of this time because parts and pieces are scarce at this point. So we are working very closely with them. They are keeping us updated as to the progress, and hopefully we'll see that being wrapped up sooner than later. But we are expecting by end of month.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Chastity. And the only reason I questioned was because the minutes of the last meeting mentioned December.
It did. They had given us some updates saying that they were not going to be able to get some of the parts in until then. However, I think that they were able to pull some strings and be able to get what we needed. So they are in there currently right now pulling. And so they've given us an estimate of end of month. And I'm not going to get too excited right now until we actually see a little bit more progression.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chastity. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Just to give you a little bit of background on me, and I do not do bragging, but 9 years in the industry, very much excited to be here. Looking forward to working in a very fast facility. So I'm looking very much forward to it. Chris threw me in really well with the widespread panic concert, so I think I've gotten my feet wet pretty good.
Well, definitely been a great asset to us here at the venue. And Daniel, depending on your time of your visit today, maybe you and Chastity can connect and say hello in person with that. So moving on, I believe the next section that we have is upcoming events by Laura Weston.
Hello, everyone. So we do have a pretty busy October and November. Only give you a rundown for the next month. We have Cody Jenks in the arena this coming Saturday. After that, we'll have the Craft Fair of the Southern Highlands. They're here October 14th through the 17th. That's Thursday through Sunday. Gojira, which is sold out, as Chastity mentioned, on October 23rd. Indigo Girls, October 27th. And that is followed by 3 sold out arena performances with Billy Strings. And then we have Camp in Thomas Wolfe on November 2nd, which is also sold out. So a nice string of sold out events here in the next month.
Well, I think you all have done a great job of handling the whole COVID protocols. I've been so impressed, and I know that Janet Cohn has even adopted some of your procedures for the university. So thank you so much for all that work that you've done.
Certainly, yeah, that all has gone really well. So we're glad.
Chris, you have a question?
I just want to give a little insight to Laura and Matt in advance for the Billy String Show, because he just played on the festival lineup that I was at over the weekend. And their team has very, very strict COVID protocols for all the photographers that are in the pit. And just so that you're not thrown off the day of, they require for media or anybody inside the pit to have all of, if they're a photographer, all 3, a vaccine card, a COVID negative test from the last 48 hours, and an additional photo waiver for signature. So just when that comes up that you have photographers reaching out, those are all the hoops that they're going to have to jump through.
Yeah, and Chastity and Chris have done a really great job at advancing our shows too. We work with artists as to what their comfort level is, not just for the guests attending the event, but our internal staff as well as any staff that would be in close proximity to backstage. And we, each artist is different, as I'm sure you're aware, Chrissa. But I think we're doing a great job with it. And again, shout out to Chastity on that. She really hit the ground rolling, and we've already seen really great changes and improvements since.
I believe it. I have no doubt. It was just kind of thrown out at us last minute from his team. So I just wanted to make sure that you all received the same surprise.
Right. I'll chime in on that phone for just a second as well. So we've been getting periodic updates from a lot of our artists that'll be coming into the facility. Even with a vaccine, we've got requirements of testing prior to as well. So we're taking every precaution whatsoever possible, not only just with our staff, but with the crews and with the artists. So we're letting them know as well that, we're on top of this. We're going to stay on top of it. And if there's anything that is new and unusual that comes up, we are going to make sure that we're going to keep them safe and keep our staff safe as well, because we definitely want to stay open.
Great. Krista, thank you for bringing that up. It always is helpful to know, a little more, that you've run into something. So, and Chastity's all over it, so that's great as well. Any other questions that we have before we go on to old business? Anybody? No? The biggest thing in the old business is the community partners opportunities. All of you received a form to fill out to say which committee, I know we're not supposed to use that word, group you'd like to be with. Please do that so in November we can form these groups and announce who they are, who's in those groups. Any new business that we haven't covered? No? All right. Our next meeting will be November the 2nd, same time, 12 o'clock. It still will continue to be virtual. We are facing adjournment at the end. Is that correct, Matthew?
That is correct. And I'd like to say congratulations on your first meeting, Donna. I thought you did great.
Thank you. I was so nervous about this. I got on the call at 9:45. Not, I'm saying, where are you? And all of a sudden I realized what time it was. So anyway, thank you again, Matthew, for keeping me on track. Everybody, thank you for your time. We really appreciate all that you do for the city and the community at large. And we are adjourned.